Hey and welcome to my last video of 2021. Now naturally it's a time where a lot of us like to reflect on how we're getting on with things like our guitar playing. And in this video I want to reflect on mistakes I've made, and 5 in particular, things which held me back with my own progress on the guitar. Now stay tuned to the end, there's something I need your help with in 2022. Now in the comments share if you can relate to any of these mistakes I've made, or if there's any other ones that you want to share that, things you've realised that, oh, that was not a great way to approach doing this. So mistake number 1 is practicing too many things. Now, I'm sure this is something many of you can relate to, but this is just simply taking on too much at once and losing focus. This is an obvious mistake to make, but it's an easy trap to fall in, and it's this problem for me started with, either taking on too many songs to learn so that I don't remember them, or don't know them all to a high enough standard, working on too many concepts or too many different exercises, and not completing things, jumping from one thing to the next before I've really fully explored something. And this definitely comes when you don't have a structured approach to your practice, if you don't have a routine. And for me, if I find myself practicing too many things, it's because I've drifted away from a structured practice routine and I've started to just go off piece, and almost every practice session is just kind of, what shall I do today? Which is not a great way to work. The problem with practicing too many things is you just dilute the quality of everything. If you have a focused, structured approach, you have a few things which build and help you really progress as a player. Whereas if you have lots of different things, they all very, very slowly get better, and it's harder to see things really going somewhere, I think. So what helped me avoid this is to have a practice routine. Now, how that looks for you, how it looks for me and someone else will be different, because we're all at different stages, we'll have different amounts of time we can dedicate to this. So it really needs to be something which is relevant to you where you're at now. That helps. Also just being disciplined. Just, not being allured by that song, I really want to learn On Green Dolphin Street, or whatever it might be. Actually, no, do you know what? I've not really finished working with Cherokee. I need to get that. I need to nail that first. And a very simple answer to this is just to pick a few things and work on them till you've really got them. Securely got them. Because actually having something down on the guitar, I think you've got to almost take it to, not 100%, but 120%. You've got to push it that bit further to have it in your memory, under your fingers, be able to use it, be able to apply it. These things take time, and I think you have to really fully explore things to get the most out of them. This kind of problem of being drawn to lots of different things will depend on your personality. Some people get bored of a practice routine or sticking with the same thing. And for me, it comes down to self-discipline. To know that, actually, it's not helpful working on 10 songs across this week. It's really good just to work on one, or even just one across this month, and know it really well. We're all individuals, we'll all do things differently and react differently. And just to sum up why it's a problem practicing too much, what I find is you might find you're still practicing a lot, but nothing's really going in, nothing's really going anywhere, because you're just working on too much, and that doesn't lead to good long-term progress. So best to be avoided if you can. Mistake number 2 is prioritizing shapes. Now, the guitar is a very visual instrument in the sense that, we have chord shapes, we have arpeggio shapes, we have, scale patterns and things like that, which, are good for our memory and retention of things. And the problem I made here is when I was working on arpeggios and getting arpeggios down on the fretboard, I got obsessed with mapping them out in 2 octaves all over the fretboard, starting from, off the E string, starting from the root, the 3rd and the 5th, and maybe the 7th as well, and just mapping it all out. And I prioritised the shapes and the technique of it over the sound. And it was almost just like, how fast can I play these, to a metronome? Can I get through them all? And the sound of it was just not a concern to me. It was all about, as if I was learning chord shapes. It was just like, right, I've got to get these shapes down. Now, while that wasn't a completely worthless activity, I'm sure it helped with my fretboard knowledge and so forth, the mistake I made was I prioritised the shapes, and I didn't bring in my understanding of the sound and the intervals till much later on. What I was left with was the ability to shred through arpeggios at speed. When it came to applying them, that's all I could do. Now, the problem with that is shredding arpeggios doesn't sound like melodies, it doesn't sound like solos, and it's not something that particularly appeals to me. But I thought, I've got to get through this phase of technique and fretboard understanding, and I think I just took it too far with the technique and the shapes. Things I'd have been much better off doing is going a lot slower and singing them, understanding the intervals, trying to create melodies with them. That's what I wish I'd done. Also, because I just got into the shape side of things, I made my work a lot harder, because really, if you understand the intervals, of arpeggios, it's much easier to understand how they share notes, how they have similar, say for instance, if you're working on major 7 arpeggios versus dominant 7th arpeggios, it is just one note different. Whereas if you're just practicing shapes all the time, I think you just get absorbed in that world, and it's not very musical. Mistake number 3 is thinking you've got it. If someone says they've practiced everything, they've done everything, they've completed jazz guitar, then they're an outright liar, and call them out for it, because there's simply so much to learn. And if you ever reach this point with an element of your playing where you think, well, I've got this and don't need to work on that anymore, then for me that's a problem, because there's the old adage of you don't know what you don't know, and there's so much out there to explore on the guitar. I'll illustrate this with, I was having a conversation with a friend the other day. He's about 20 years older than me, guitar player, jazz guitar player. And we were just talking about what you've been working on lately. And he was like, oh, he's been working on chords. And I mentioned something about drop voicings. And he's like, what? What's that? And I was really surprised to think that someone that's been playing 20 years longer than me, and never heard of drop voicings. Never heard of them. Now, obviously, they would have probably played drop voicings without knowing their chord drop voicings. But you're missing out, I think, if you didn't know about the differences between drop 2, drop 3, drop 2 and 4, because they offer so much potential for interesting comping and for chord melody. But I can think back to a time where I really didn't bother working on chords because I thought I had all the chords I needed, and to an extent I did. In the sense that for me that was off the E and the A string and maybe the D string as well. I could play the main chord types, and it was only later on through books like Ted Green's Chord Chemistry, and there's a swing rhythm guitar book that I really like, and they just opened me up to the world of inversions and the potential of inversions. Obviously, I knew about inversions from earlier playing guitar, D/F sharp, G/B, C/E, sort of Hendrix rhythm guitar playing that I'd done, but not to the extent that you need to be a really good jazz guitar player. But I had a good period of a few years where I didn't bother learning any new chord shapes really, where I was just sort of quite happy with my rhythm guitar and the shapes I knew. And I think, if I'd have stayed in that world, I'd have missed out on so much. I mean, learning all those inversions opened me up to be able to make up my own chord melodies, also just really much more interesting voice leading and comping. I'd have missed out on so much, and it was that problem of thinking I'd had it, I'd got it down. With this age we live in, with easy access to books, materials online and so forth, it's much easier to be exposed to things you don't know, and you almost can be overwhelmed by that amount of stuff you don't know. But it is easy, I think, to fall into the trap of thinking you've got something down. And I think some of the best musicians I've worked with are very humble in that, and they know that they still need to work on the basics like ear training, intervals and rhythm and so forth. And if you get to that trap of thinking you've got it, you probably come unstuck. And I think those that really excel at learning a musical instrument know the right questions to ask themselves when they're practicing. They have that curious mind. But they also know the right questions to ask of others that are more experienced than them and how they've got there. Mistake number 4 is not listening to enough music. And by this I mean simply not listening to enough jazz. I previously fallen into the trap where I practiced loads, but I wasn't listening enough to the genre. I'm the sort of person that gets really into one artist. So, particularly remember when I first got into Django Reinhardt, it was literally just him that I listened to. Or when I first got into Charlie Christian, it was just, that's all I wanted to listen to and just absorb myself in that. Whereas now I try to broaden what I listen to and listen to, as many guitarists as possible and, horn players and singers, and just broaden the amount of music I listen to within the genre. Now I think it's really important. You need to be familiar with the repertoire that people play. You need to obviously be familiar with the key players. But what do you get from listening to it? You'll get inspired by a certain song. A certain song will grab you and motivate you to practice. You'll absorb someone's phrasing. You'll pick up ideas for arranging. You'll hear interesting chords. You'll train your ear to hear chords and intervals as well. So I think it's as important as practicing. And I think it's something really easy to miss off. And for this reason, some of my younger students, I actually give them listening homework and say, right, this week I want you to go away and listen to this album. And let me know what you think. Mistake number 5 is really a mental one, and it's expecting too much of myself and comparing myself to others. Sadly, it's very easy to equate your self-worth with your ability on the guitar and how that compares to your peers. Now, I've done this in the past, and it doesn't lead anywhere helpful or anywhere positive. All that it does is you end up expecting more and more of yourself. You put pressure on yourself to practice more and more, because you're trying to improve to be better than the next person. Or if you see them play, you think, oh, they can do that. Oh, I need to work on that. Now, 2 things that really helped me move away from that mindset, because it was really not helpful. The first thing is really simple. is that the best thing about our own guitar playing as individuals is that it's our own playing, and we've got our own idiosyncrasies and our ways of approaching the instrument. And we should embrace those and enjoy them as our way of playing. For me, this came down to embracing my strengths, and then in terms of weaknesses, unless they're really critical things like playing in time and basic technique, then there's certain things, you can't be good at everything, and that's not a problem. I can think of many times where I'd be playing on a festival, on a bill with other acts and guitar players, and you'd see one and it'd be fast lines, really amazing technique, flowing through the changes, incredible. And it's just not something that came naturally to me, and never has, and probably never will. And I used to perceive it as a problem. And then I thought about, well, do you know what? What do people actually say about my own playing that, things that I like that they've said? And they've, people have said very lyrical, melodic, good phrasing, play with feel, and also nice sense of intention with my phrasing. And that's what I realised is, do you know what? That is where my strengths lie, is in creating a melody, telling a story over changes, not playing quickly. It's just not something I think I ever really get. And once I stopped making those comparisons and actually could just watch another guitar player and enjoy them for what they are as an individual, knowing that, it's not a problem that they can do the following things that I can't, because I've got my own thing going on, which, other people will look at and go, oh, I wish I could phrase like that, or, whatever it might be that someone sees in someone else's playing. The second thing that helps with this is enjoying the process more. And, you don't want to pile too much pressure on in terms of pressure to do so many hours or achieve so much in a short space of time. For me, practice should be, relaxed and enjoying the process of learning. Some days will be better than others. And it's all, just one big journey that you progress on. So that's 5 mistakes that I've made to get to this point, and I'm sure I'll continue to make mistakes in the way I approach to play music and practice, and continue to learn from those mistakes. Now, at the start of the video, I said something I need your help with in 2022. Very simple, but just in 2022, I would love for these videos to have a wider reach, and just some simple things you can do to help with that. Just, leaving a comment, or hitting that like button, those sort of forms of interaction really help boost how videos go out. I'm always looking to try to improve the quality of my videos, whether that be from a technical standpoint or the actual ins and outs of the content I'm making. So if you've got any constructive criticism, feedback on the videos that I make, then feel free to leave them. I'm always interested in ways I can improve this channel and your experience. And finally, I'm really looking forward to getting stuck into making videos next year and continuing to help you with your jazz guitar, and you guys helping me grow as a channel. Thanks again, and see you next year.